Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's session. Sorry for the delay. We just had some minor technical issues, but I wanted to welcome everybody to today's webinar. This is some resume writing tips and tricks, kind of to sell your skill set. My name is Marissa Shu, and I'm a program lead at the TRET Association of America, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. During this webinar, participants will learn the do's and don'ts of resume writing, such as kind of how to format a resume, kind of how to sell your skill sets, and perhaps addressing gaps in employment. Participants will have the opportunity at the end to ask questions of the speakers, so please utilize the question and chat functions to relay your comments and questions to the speakers. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this webinar. First up, we have Kaylee Mazza. She's a over 6-year talent acquisition professional who supports L'Oreal's corporate function recruitment processes with a focus on searching for scientific and engineering profiles for the research and innovation and operations group. Prior to her time at L'Oreal, she worked in the information technology and financial industries for 4 years. From her work experience, she has gained expertise in resume writing, application review, initial job application conversations, and even interview prep tips and tricks. She is an animal lover with 2 rescue fur babies herself and a passionate DE&I recruitment leader. And next we have Nick Adivio. I hopefully I said that correct. He has had over 35 years of professional career experience that has spanned multiple industries and functions across Fortune 500 global companies. He is currently the VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at L'Oreal after almost 15 years in HR strategy for multiple L'Oreal brands. Over the course of his 19 years in the L'Oreal journey, he has successfully worked with, coached, and developed employees from all levels. In his DEI role, he leads the Veterans Military Strategy, the Disability Strategy, Supplier Diversity, Age and Generation Strategy, and also serves as an advisor to the HR teams and delivers much of the DEI educational content across the business. He has worked with the Rising Leaders Program at the TRET Association of America and serves on the Community Advisory Board for Employment Horizons, a disability employment agency. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Kaylee and Nick for our presentation. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know, Nick, do you want to start? You want me to kick it off? Hi, everyone. Very excited to meet you all. We're going to share some really great tips with you and take you through some background on L'Oreal to kick us off. I guess I will go to our first slide, which I think is actually our identity map. So Nick, take it away.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Kaylee, for that introduction, and Marissa as well. We're happy to be here with our friends at the TRET Association. My name is Nick Idivio. I am a cisgender white male that identifies with 2 disabilities. I have a hearing loss from birth, and I am also diagnosed with anxiety and depression. The identity maps are an opportunity for us to connect to each other in different ways and connect to each other's humanity. So just a little bit about me. I am the brother to 3 older sisters, Kathy, Diane, and Annette. My parents were Depression-era babies. My father was a World War II veteran who definitely suffered from PTSD. As I mentioned, I have 2 disabilities. I'm the father of 3 children, Nicholas, Elizabeth, and Grace. Married to my wife for 29 years, Susan. I'm an MBA at Adelphi University, and I'm also on the board of trustees there. I teach at FIT in New York City, and I did my undergrad at Bentley, and I got a degree in computer science. So I went from computer science and Bentley College and University 33 years ago to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Beauty Company. And I am a person of faith and of Italian, Spanish, American background. So I'm also, just for those of who are vision impaired, I am wearing a blue shirt, and I have salt and pepper hair with black rim glasses and a name badge around my neck with a black rimmed name badge. So Kaylee, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Mazza, and as Marissa shared before, I am a talent acquisition professional working in the recruitment space for a few years. Can't compete with Nick's wonderful years of experience. He definitely has a lot of wealth to share, but I'm definitely excited to be here with you all, taking you through my little map here. I am a foodie. I love food. I love to cook. It's kind of the way I decompress after a long day at work. I'm an Italian, Swedish, German American. I know that's a mouthful, but that's, you know, the makeup of my parents and what makes me me. I have a sister, one younger sister. Her name is Chloe. My parents are both Generation X, and my dad is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. And my mother was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom to raise me and my sister. I do identify as somebody with anxiety. It is something that is in my adult life that I've had to manage and learn to balance that within my professional life as well as personal. I am a pet mom of 2 rescues. You can see them here in the picture, Luna and Bella, my dog and my cat. They are my children through and through. I have a partner named Lou. We've been together for about 7 years. And then, you know, my pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And following Nick's example, for those who might be visually impaired, I am wearing a red and white long sleeve dress. You can't see the bottom, but it's a dress. And wearing green square rimmed glasses. I have dark black hair. And I'm very excited to be here with you all and kind of take you through this presentation. Okay, now I don't know if we are going to be able to hear this. Do we want to just skip this, Nick, or do we want to give it a shot?
Let's give it a shot and see if we hear it. We don't, we could skip it. Just a little video about L'Oreal. Doesn't look like it's playing, so we're probably just going to have to skip it.
Okay, well, we'll skip that. Maybe we can send it to Marissa afterwards for her to share with the group. But go ahead, take it away, Nick.
Okay, so, you know, we wanted to start with a little bit of an overview of L'Oreal. For those of you who remember me from the conference in DC maybe a year or 2 ago, I did go over the brand portfolio, and, you know, it's a unique brand portfolio that really is resonating with all of our consumers in many, many different ways. It's 4 divisions: active cosmetics, consumer, luxury, and professional. And each one of those brands, you know, each one of those divisions is organized by a channel of distribution. So our brands really reflect the diversity of the consumers that we are serving. And we're always looking to continue to develop the diversity of our portfolio. But when you think about beauty, we are encompassing of all of the beauty categories, whether it's nail, makeup, skin, hair, lip, eye, and men and women, identifying consumers as well. So we have products in just about every category. And we are 37 global brands, and each one of those brands is an amazing brand offering. I've worked on so many of these different brands, and they're really a lot of fun to work alongside of such amazing, talented, and professional, creative people that are really, really making the brands the best in the market. And our goal is really to continue to resonate and create relevant brand experiences for our consumers, and continue to create a portfolio that represents the consumers that we do business with and the communities that we do business with. You can go to the next slide.
Hold on. It's not letting me move. There we go.
Okay, so just a little bit of performance. I mean, I think the numbers speak for themselves, and Kaylee, thanks for getting the latest numbers to us. But I think a couple of things to recognize is that we are a company that is in multiple countries around the world. I think we're in 150 countries plus. We have 87,000 plus employees. You know, this company is continuing to grow, 20 research centers. And I think what's also interesting is that we generate 500 plus patents a year. So this company is also grounded in innovation. And we know that that's going to be the way we're going to continue to grow our company, is through innovation and through creating a culture that supports that. So we're really proud of these results. It comes as a result of everyone's efforts. And, you know, D&I is really a big part of why we are so successful, because when we have the best ideas, it comes from understanding different lived experiences and creating a culture that allows for different points of view and psychological safety, and, you know, understanding what people might need to be successful and what kinds of products and services people would love to have. So we're really proud of our results, but we are always looking to improve, and that's a great company to work for. So 5 things we'd love for you to know about L'Oreal quickly. You can go to the next slide. First, you know, is the fact that we're, you know, I started here 20 years ago. We've evolved very much into a tech company. You know, when we think about how products and services are not only developed but also delivered, and used by our consumers and partners and employees also. It's powered by technology. So, tech is in our lives in almost every aspect of our lives, as you know. And it's really about, the personal experience that we want to create for each of our consumers and people that are using our brands so that we can make beauty more inclusive and provide opportunities for people that may not be able to have the experiences that they can get in a physical brick and mortar location, that you could still have an amazing brand experience in a virtual setting that can continue to give you the solutions that you're looking for your beauty needs. And we continue to know that retail is relevant, and we are always looking to evolve our retail strategies and how do we create experiences in retail stores and also online and with our partners that are relevant and resonate with our consumers. And we're always evolving. So technology is very much a part of how we grow our business. You can go to the next slide. And, similarly, as I've already said it, innovation is really the foundation of our future. And it's really interesting to think about how many R&I people we have, and they're located all around the world in different centers. And we've got, over 4,000 people that are working towards the best innovation, the best products, the best way to do it sustainably, the best way to create services that matter to our employees and to our consumers and to the communities that we do business in. I just think it's so amazing that we have 517 patents, plus every year. That just shows you how committed we are to continuing to reinvest in technology and innovation to bring the best of what we can to our consumers. Go to the next slide. A company like ours, we know for a very long time that, the future of our industry and the future of our company really depends on how well we treat the world and how well we are, engaging with our partners in ensuring that we are, making sure that we are, carbon conscious and recycling and ensuring that we're, ensuring that the way in which we think about our business is not just to create great products, but how are we going to do it in a sustainable way that, keeps our environment safe and thinks about the future for the next 100 years, not just the next 5. And that's what I've loved about this company in my years here, is we're always thinking about the future and always thinking about our role in the world and how we can make a world a safer, more inclusive world. And that's the kind of company that I love to work for, is that always looking for the new, better, different way to be more responsible and be the best inclusive, most socially conscious company that we can be. Beauty is also gender balance. We know that the beauty industry tends to attract male identifying employees, but beauty is spans everyone. Everyone wants to feel good about themselves. I mean, when I first started L'Oreal, I was using maybe one product. If you looked in my bag this morning when I went to the gym, there's probably 15 L'Oreal products that I'm using now that on a regular basis. So, one of the things that I've loved about this company is that we are focused on, ensuring that we are balanced in our gender strategy that we want to have. Ensuring that 45% of our key positions are held by men, but also that significantly we have great leaders in top positions throughout the C-suites and that are female identifying employees. So we continue to ensure that the gender pay gap is closed, that we are gender balanced, because that's how we're going to create the best possible products and services and create the culture that is truly inclusive. And then, what we're talking about right now is DE&I, and it's so much a part of how we look at our brands and our business. And, we create products and services for people from every walk of life and every cultural background, every ethnicity. And we want to continue to ensure that our brands are really thinking about our consumers and how best we can service them and create great products and brand services that will be relevant and resonate with our consumers. And the only way we do that is by ensuring that that representation in our company matters as well, because how would we know if we don't understand the lived experiences of the consumers that we do business with and the employees that we have? So we're always listening, we're always looking to learn, we're always looking to understand so that we can be that most inclusive company in the world. You can go to the next slide. Are you stuck?
Yeah, it's a little lagged on my end. Hopefully you can see it now. Can you?
Not yet.
Okay. It's on my screen. Hold on, give me 1 sec. Sorry, everyone. How about now? No? Let me try. Yeah, it went forward on my screen. I don't know why. Let me stop sharing for a second. Share. There we go.
Okay, sustainability. And so similarly, you know, we want to ensure that our commitments that we're making, that we are continuing to transform ourselves and our company and empowering our business ecosystems to be sustainable and create the opportunities to transition to a more sustainable world and contributing to really helping to solve the world's challenges and being out front of that and making those social commitments. And our CEOs are making those commitments verbally, and we're really proud of the work that we do, but we're always continuing to do more. So we're really proud of our sustainability commitments for 2030 and beyond. And I just love this slide. I love showing this slide because it shows, you know, people think beauty and they're thinking, okay, makeup, lipstick, hair, shampoo, what else can I do at L'Oreal? And there's so much that goes beyond those, and those jobs are incredibly important to us. You know, the people that are delivering those services as hairdressers, as makeup artists, but there's people who develop the products, there's people who sell the products, there's people who do the websites, there's people who do R&I and do the innovation, the science behind it all. There's people who are doing communications, there's people who are doing selling. I mean, every analytics, supply chain, hiring, HR, you name it, almost every function is represented at L'Oreal. We have 12 major functions, and some of these are just some of the jobs that sort of sit inside of those functions. So we've got something for everyone here at L'Oreal. And when we talk about DE&I, you know, really is about, you know, a lot of companies have been doing the work. We've been doing this work for 20 years now, and we believe that DE&I is really an important part of our strategy, because when you create this culture of inclusion, you're going to get great results, and we've proven that. It's been, you know, studied by Deloitte and McKinsey and Korn Ferry and, you know, all of these organizations, but we have put it into practice, and certainly we're on a journey. D&I is never a destination, it's always a journey. And we're looking to always create that culture where people feel seen, supported, connected, and proud of the work that you do, so that when you do that, you feel psychologically safe and that you belong at L'Oreal. And that's really what's important, especially for those of us that have disabilities. We want to feel safe, and we want to feel that we belong, that we know that we're going to be supported with whatever we need to be able to do our jobs and do it well, and feel that we're accomplishing, you know, our career objectives. And that's what we want people to feel when they come to L'Oreal. Again, psychological safety is really all about, you know, that shared belief that we have at L'Oreal, that you will, you know, be in a place where you can actually speak up, and raise a refuting point, or raise a different idea or a new point of view, or try to take a risk on something and might make a mistake, and it's okay. Because sometimes, many times, I could tell you personally in my career, sometimes the best lessons I've learned in my career have always been not from the successes, but from some of those mistakes that I've had. So we encourage that. We encourage risk taking. We encourage, you know, that those really impactful discussions that create the better idea. And that's when we can do that. When we create that culture where people can actually say what they really believe, and come up with, you know, a different point of view. That's how we're going to get to the better idea, the better way to serve our customers, the better way for our employees to feel safe here, and the better way to serve our greater ecosystem of L'Oreal, including our partners that we do business with.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn it over to the fabulous Kaylee to talk about, you know, some really, so this is the meat and potatoes of why we wanted to come to you today and give you some real tips on taking a look at how you approach your resume strategy and your job search and things that, you know, that are really thoughtful to think about as you go through the next part of your strategy in looking at your jobs that you might be interested in, industries you might be interested in companies that you might want to work at. So I'm going to turn it over to the famous and fabulous Kaylee Mazza.
Thank you, Nick. And before I jump into everything, I wanted to try sharing my screen one other way, because we have a really great video in this section that we would really want you all to hear. If it doesn't work, then I will still drop the YouTube link in the chat for you all, but I'm going to try one other thing. That's why I went off camera to see if it worked. So let me see. Okay, so you can see this, but you can't see the presentation now. So give me 1 second and appreciate your understanding. It has been, you know, okay, so can you see? Let's try it. Let's see. We'll get to the video. Maybe it'll work. If not, you know, again, I will share it with you all and we'll still cover some really great information for you. So before we jump into some of the resume, you know, tips and tricks, we wanted to do a quick little brand identity exercise, you know, or talk about, you know, what do you want your resume to say about you in the first 2 seconds? Now, I don't know, Nick, I don't know if you have the box with us, or we can talk through it. Or if
I forgot you to bring it with me, and I needed it 3 times today for 3 different presentations. I completely forgot it. So the question I ask usually is, Kaylee, what phone do you use?
I have an Apple phone.
Okay, and tell me 3 reasons why you chose the Apple phone.
It connects to my other devices like my laptop and my Apple Watch. The interface is really easy and user-friendly, and I like the look of the phone. It's very
Okay,
safe.
so connectivity, interfacing, and the actual physical appearance. Those are 3 really clear brand attributes about Apple, about that phone, that you were able to rattle off 1, 2, 3 like that, right?
Yep.
If the brand manager, there's a brand manager who runs the business for your phone in Cupertino, California, and that works for Apple. If that person was on the phone with us, they'd be pretty happy right now that you're able to just clearly say what matters to you or resonates to you about that brand. If I were to hold to Kaylee's point, I was hoping to bring the Apple box, but you all know what an Apple box looks like. If I were to actually bring an Apple box and hold it up and take all the markings off, you would very easily say, Nick, that's an Apple box. That's how clean their brand is. You can walk into a mall and see the Apple store all the way on the other side of the mall. Without the markings, you'll know it's the Apple store. You go online, their execution is so clean and so consistent. So this is what Kaylee's really, I think, going to lead us into is, what is those 3 to 5 clear brand that makes you unique? What is it about you that you want people to know when they see your resume, when they see you and they meet you? Like, you're unique, you have power, you have skills, you have ability. What do you want people to know? And like, as quickly as that, when you see that resume, that's what we're getting at. So Kaylee, take it over.
Perfect. And exactly. And that's, you know, as a recruiter, oftentimes when I am looking at resumes or scanning them over, sometimes I will spend upwards of 10 minutes. Sometimes I will spend only 2 seconds looking at the resume. And that's why it's so important when you are crafting your resume, or when you are thinking about, you know, maybe a job you're applying to, or switching careers or anything like that, thinking about this, just what do you want your resume to say about you in the first 2 seconds? You have to think about your audience and who is looking at the resume, and again, the time that they're spending. And of course, we'll get into a little bit more, and I'll go to our next slide here. And I'm going to see, because this is hopefully, it's really great information. If not, I'm going to cover it anyway. So I'm going to play it. Maybe we'll have sound, maybe not. If not, I will still drop it in the chat for you all. Oh, yes, Nick, can you hear it?
No.
All right. That's okay. Like I said, I will still.
We'll send you that video.
Yes, we will. How do I out of this now? Go to the next. It's not letting me go to the next slide. Oh man, we are just rolling with it today.
Yeah.
Okay. So in any way, what this video was, oh, go ahead. Okay, so what this video was going to show anyway, I was going to cover it anyway. So they talk about like 5 key tips and tricks when you're crafting your resume. The first is always using a professional font. An example that the video shares, and also one that I, personally prefer, is Times New Roman. You can also use fonts like Arial, Calibri, I think is how you pronounce it, and more of these professional fonts. The reason for this is you want your reader to be able to read your resume. There are some nuances to this, an opportunity to be a little bit more creative, but when in doubt, you have to think of your resume as this professional collateral. You want the person to be able to read it, follow it, and not misinterpret the words that you're saying because you have a cursive font or a curly font. The person who might be reading your resume might be, vision impaired and not be able to read completely. So taking these things into context when you're crafting your resume, this is step number 1. Now, step number 2 is always starting off with an executive summary and skills. Now, there are some different places you can put skills. Some people will put skills at the top of their resume, right under the summary. Some people will put it at the bottom. The skills, it doesn't really matter where you put it in the resume. And again, I have examples to show you what I mean by this. But you always want to have an executive summary. This is going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 sentences, very short and sweet at the top of who you are. Again, this is really where that opportunity is going to be to flex that. What do you want the person reading your resume to know about you in the first 2 seconds? Because oftentimes, from my perspective, that is the first thing I go to. I read and see, okay, this person says they are a 7-year professional with sales experience. Great. I have a sales role. This is the person I'm going to want to talk to. Let me continue reading the rest of their resume. So a strong executive summary is a really great way to grab recruiters' attention, whoever's reviewing your resume, and even start off by showcasing some of your skills. Keep your resume simple, but do include numbers and metrics of achievements. Now, what I mean by this is you don't want to put an essay in your resume. Less is more, but you don't want to cut back too much. So you do want to include some of your key achievements. You do want to include this, but also knowing that less is more when it comes to a resume, because if selected for an interview, you are going to be asked questions to elaborate on your resume. Tell me about this experience. And that's the space where you're going to want to maybe talk a little bit more. But your resume should not be where you're putting an essay. Keep it to short, simple, sweet, bullet points and so on. Staying on this line, along the lines of keeping it simple. Your resume should be about 1 to 2 pages long. Now, I know many years ago, I was told that if your resume is longer than a page, that is a bad thing. That is not the case, especially if you have experience that you would like to highlight. Now, I have seen people who really want to keep it to 1 page, and they'll put on the bottom, more experience upon request, or somebody can ask for more. But generally speaking, if you have 5 years of experience or less, 1 page is enough. But if you have more than 5 years of experience, you can go into those 2 pages, and that is still perceived as simple enough. Now, beyond 2 pages, the only space that I've really seen resumes longer than 2 pages is if you're in the information technology space. That is just because oftentimes you need to put the different tools, the different technologies, the stacks that you have, and I've seen some of those resumes be about 5 pages long, but that's the exception. Generally, keep it to 1 to 2 pages when you are crafting your resume. Going back to the other point of using bullet points and including, again, I don't know what is happening.
There you
Using
go.
those bullet
You're back. You're back.
Great. It picked off on me. We're just rolling with it. But using those bullet points, and again, including those KPIs and accomplishments in those bullet points. Again, I will elaborate more on this with some examples later on. Include your education and any other. I don't know why
You flipped off again.
I don't know why it keeps doing this to me. Okay. But including your education and any other certifications. So this is a great opportunity for you to, it keeps flashing on me. I'm gonna try sharing this the other way. Apologies, everyone. I don't know why it keeps kicking me out. Because this is the good information that you want. Let's do this. Okay. May minimize this. Okay. Are we back? Can you see it? Let me know.
Yes,
Okay, cool.
we're good. Yep.
So what I was saying was just including your education and any other certifications. Now, sometimes in certain roles, there are certain certifications that are required for you to include. Other cases, it might just be extra work that you've done to help better yourself. For example, I always include the DE&I certification that I took prior to my time here at L'Oreal, because that was something that I did for my own professional growth, because I was very passionate about this space. And it's something that I just wanted to make my resume stand out a little bit more and showcase some of my interests in a professional manner. And then proofread. This has 3 exclamation points for a reason. This is the biggest area of improvement a lot of times with resumes. Now, of course, there is some grace. Myself as a recruiter, I won't just reject somebody because they have a simple typo, but I have run into some hiring managers who will get very detailed in this and look at it. So just proofread. Ask your friends to read it over. There are really great, tools online like Grammarly, where you can like copy and paste the Word document into them, and it'll do some of the grammar and proofreading for you. But this is just something that before you submit your resume anywhere, proofread, because this is the biggest thing. It's the easiest thing to control, quite honestly, because if you
Kaylee,
just
can I share a story on this?
Yeah, go ahead, hit me.
So, as you can tell, I'm a little bit older than Kaylee, and I went to college in 1988. It was when I graduated, and I was a computer major. So we were actually just starting to, program the first laptops back then. But, when we were doing our resumes, there really wasn't the technology that exists today. And I remember taking an English Lit class, and I learned a lesson that I've used ever since then. I've used this lesson for 30 plus years. And I handed in a paper that I didn't proofread, right, to English. And I had 4-0'd the guy 3 times. This is my 4th class taking him. The first paper I handed back to him, red ink all over it. And he's like, you need to come see me. So he said, you didn't proofread this. And I said, no, I did not. I'm sorry, and he said, I'm going to teach you something for the rest of your life. You're going to remember this. Anytime you hand in a document, a paper, sign a contract, do a presentation, I want you to read it from the back to the front or the bottom up, line by line by line by line. And I always tell people that I'm helping with their resumes, to say, very first thing I want you to do tonight is go to your resume and go to the bottom.
Yes.
And read it from the bottom up. And I'm going to show you how I mean by this. So if I read what Kaylee has here right on this sheet, line 7 has a proofread exclamation. Include your certification period. Use your bullet point period. Keep it to 1 to 2 pages long period. Number of achievements period. Start off with skills period. The first line has no period after that. And I'm able to see these things because I read it from the bottom up. So when you read things from the bottom up, you're looking at content, not context. So when you think about reading from the top down, you know your story, so you're going to skip things and your mind's going to play tricks on you, and you're just going to skip stuff that you might not even see. But by reading it from the bottom up, line by line by line, you're going to be able to proofread excellently and find things that, even if it's grammar correct or font is correct, you might see a word or the way it's phrased, oh, I don't like that, I want to do it differently. So Nick's homework to you tonight, well, I'm sure Kaylee has more assignments for you, but is to read it from the bottom up. That's one thing I want you to do tonight.
Yes, and it's also a really great tip too from a recruiter side, because I was always taught to read resumes from the bottom to the top as well, for chronological, that's where you started your career and this is where you're at now. So it is also a really great tip to make sure that your resume also flows in the correct manner besides just the proofreading. So it's a really great tip, Nick, overall, and you caught one of my typos, so I appreciate that.
I saw it a couple of weeks ago and I left it in just for this.
Perfect. So now we're going to cover, so those are some tips. Now I'm going to give you some do nots. And then of course I will bookend it with some do's. But so here are some just general rule of thumb of resume writing do nots. First, do not include hobbies at the bottom. Save this for your recruiter conversation. Now, of course, you do want to add some, again, we talked about this. What do you want your resume to say about you in the first 2 seconds? That is more in a professional manner. That is more in a way of showcasing your skills. Do not include the hobbies at the bottom. You'll have space for that in your recruiter or first round interviews. I always start off with asking candidates to give me their elevator pitch or to introduce themselves. that is the time where you're going to want to share some of these hobbies and, talk a little bit more about yourself and some of those experiences. Your resume, again, is your professional collateral. Do not add too many colors or fonts, as this will make it hard to read. Now, the video that I was going to show you before, it talks about you can add color. So that's not to say that everyone's resume has to be black and white. That is not the case. You can add some nice navies or dark reds, or even in some creative roles, some pastels or dark purples. You can add these colors, but don't put in a lot of neons or hard to read colors or a yellow background with white font. Again, it may look cool and pretty, but you have to also think about the person that is reading this. Again, maybe they are vision impaired and they have difficulties, and maybe they're colorblind, and maybe it will make it difficult for them to read. Now, that's not a reason for someone to reject a resume, but it also is going to make it hard for them to read your resume and make a unbiased call on wanting to speak to you. So this is just, again, you can add color, but don't go too crazy, or again, don't do a lot of those, calligraphy fonts and so on. Do not just sprinkle buzzwords or copy and paste wording from the job description into your resume. Now, I'll talk a little bit about in the next slide how you can effectively include those keywords from the job description and how to properly use buzzwords, but I've often seen candidates who will actually copy and paste the job description and put it in their resume. And as a recruiter who is reading that, we will typically catch that. And oftentimes what happens in the interviews is I'll ask them, what is this, tell me about this experience. And they won't know because they just copied and pasted the job description into it or put some buzzwords. For example, if you see a job description says Excel, don't just put Excel in there in a few places just so you get a call. If you have it, put it in there. And there's ways to do this where you can use some of the keywords from the job description, but don't just throw them in there without putting some thought behind it. Do not put graphics. And I put an asterisk here for a reason. The one caveat to putting graphics is if you are in a creative space. What I mean by that is if you're working in, say, web development, or you're working in some type of fashion industry, or you're working in some professional manner where you need to showcase your creativity in, maybe it's a portfolio. Maybe, when you are creating your resume, you want to showcase your ability to embed a picture into that resume. But generally speaking, don't put graphics. Again, less is more. The easier your resume is to read, the better the person reading it is going to receive that information and will increase your chances of, getting that first call. And again, I will have examples of this later on to show you what I mean, of the good ways and bad ways to do this. Again, just driving this point home, do not make the format complex. It may look cool, but it's going to make it very hard to read, and thinking about the person who's going to read that. So now let's do some do's, because you don't want to just talk about all the things you don't want to do. There are a lot of really good things that you can do that will help. So this is one that I think a lot of people don't know. You should have multiple versions of your resume. Oftentimes people will think, well, I just have one version of my resume. I'm just going to submit it to 100 different jobs, and that's going to result in maybe one callback. But you should have different versions of your resume that you can tweak and change the verbiage of your experience to tailor to the job you're applying to. So for example, I'll give you a real example from my resume. I have a couple from when I applied to L'Oreal. Prior to joining L'Oreal, I was between either going into a human resources business partner, so working more with people and doing more of the growth conversations. I was going that route, or I was going to leverage my talent acquisition background and continue being a recruiter. So I had one resume that my introduction said HR professional with 4+ years of experience dealing with employee complaints and handling complex human resources situations. In my talent acquisition resume, my subject says talent acquisition professional with 4+ years of experience handling again, employee complaints, negotiations, and offer letter extensions, things like this. So it's still the same background. It's just have the different versions of your resume so you can increase your chances of getting that first call, so you can then showcase those skills that you have. Do use keywords from the job description, but again, make sure it's relevant to your experience. For example, I'll use myself. So I said I have these 2 different versions of my own resume, one that's more HR generalist focused, and another that's more recruitment, talent acquisition focused. Now, I'm not going to put in my HR resume that I have experience doing something called workers' compensation and dealing with, an employee accident, because I do not have that experience. What I would put instead is, maybe it says dealing with employee accidents and employee issues. I would put in that resume, I have experience dealing with employee issues, because I do. So that's still an example that was in the job description, but I'm not pulling in the skills that I do not have, because again, anything on your resume is fair game for people to ask questions of, and you don't want to be caught in a situation that looks like you're lying. So again, look at the keywords, see which ones apply to you, and maybe change some of the synonyms in your resume to match those in the job description, but just make sure it's relevant to your experience. Do make sure that any current work is described in current tense and any past experiences are in past tense. This is, again, going back to that grammar point. It's a very simple thing, and I know I caught myself. I hadn't updated my resume because I don't need to. I'm not leaving L'Oreal. But in my experience in my last job, the role that I had when I applied to L'Oreal, everything in that resume in those bullet points were handles employee complaints, handles contractor questions. Whereas in the role I had previous, it would say handled employee complaints or handled consulted questions. It's just that differentiation of, I don't work there anymore. These are the things that I used to do. And then in your current role, these are the things that I'm currently doing. So just go back and look at your resume if you have one and make some of these slight shifts, switch some of these words around and make sure that your current experience just reflects the correct tense. Do make sure, going back to the next point, your resume reads from back to front. Again, we talked about this. It's helpful to catch, for grammar mistakes. It's also to help to make sure that you're also showcasing your experiences in the correct chronological order.
Kaylee, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What happens, I just want them to understand, like, what do you do when you have two jobs that you're currently working at?
Good question. So you mean like two different roles in that same company, or
Like,
you had a role and were promoted?
I might be working two part-time jobs and I'm going to school at the same time,
Yes.
What's the best way to portray that?
So I've seen it done a couple different ways. Some people will put them, directly in line with each other to show that you're doing them at the same time. I've seen people where, and when I get to the resume examples, I'll show you what I mean by this as well. I've seen people where they do them, where they put the years that they're in those roles. So for example, let's say I'm in school now and I'm working here at L'Oreal. On my resume, I would have the L'Oreal blurb and then say, 2021 to present. Then underneath that, I would have, student at XYZ school from 2020 to present. So you could put them in two different buckets like that, or you could put them directly next to each other. What I would recommend in that case is whichever one you started first, that one should be below the other one. So again, in that example, like I said, maybe I started school in 2020, but then I started at L'Oreal in 2021. Again, reading that from the back to front, you would put the school first and then the current work experience there. So you can have them in tandem and have multiple ones, just changing the dates and making sure those flow in the correct order.
Makes sense.
Cool. And then again, formatting, simple, driving this point home, less is more. So now let's get into the resume formatting examples. And I'm going to showcase some of the different things that I talked about in the do's and the don'ts, drive in and drive some of these points home. So first, we have Charles Foghorn here on the left, and then here on the right, unfortunately, there was no name on the sample resume. But let's start with Charles Foghorn. Here's a perfect example of someone whose fabulous formatting and color scheme is ruined by a very difficult font. It's okay, but if this were in Times New Roman, it would just look a little bit more professional and a little bit easier to read. Someone like myself who wears glasses, I would have to read this over a couple times because of the way the words overlap a little bit, or they're kind of clustered together. So again, color scheme, blue is great, the formatting of that, and this is what I was talking about too. See how it says September 2018 to August 2020? That's what I was referring to before. that's where you would put those dates of, September 2018 to present, so on. Now, the other one here on the right-hand side, again, this one, color scheme is great. The formatting, from what you can see, is fabulous. I love this, how this is with the bullet points and things like that. But this is an example of someone who is oversharing a little bit and putting some of their skills and hobbies. Let's use the example that Nick and I said of reading it from, bottom to top. The first thing I'm reading is that, you like vegan baking and poker and making people laugh. While that might be wonderful and great attributes about you, the first thing that I should be reading is your experience of you being a yoga instructor. Here again, too, this person put some really personal information around there, like their marital status. That is not something that anybody should ever be asking you. You should never have to disclose that information unless you're, of course, filing for taxes or doing some of those documentations once you're hired as an employee. But you should not put that. You should never be asked those types of questions. Those are big illegal no-nos. So here's just, again, an example of the types of skills and hobbies that you should not put in a resume. Save them for your first round conversation. Okay, so here's two examples again, ham and Gert. Let's start with ham. This is what I was talking about as this is way too flashy. This is too many graphics, and it's very hard to read. If someone is visually impaired, the shadowing under his name might be confusing. It's very distracting. I don't even know where to begin when looking at this resume. And it's unfortunate because some of the content in there is really great, but it is, very distracting. And those coins in the left-hand side, they don't need to be there. The headshot, that's another topic for conversation where you probably shouldn't be putting a headshot in there again, unless you're in one of those more creative roles and it's necessary. Now, Gert, his format is great, minus the headshot. Again, I don't think it's necessarily needed in this role. There are some, things around unconscious bias and things like that where you might not want to include that around there because there are some people who might look at a headshot and make a judgment call, and that's not fair. But when you look at Gert's resume, he's an example of someone who's sprinkling in buzzwords. He has things like, motivated go-getter with robust experience and maximizing synergy in business. That is you're throwing words in there, or you're putting in different things in there that are just buzzwords, and it's a little distracting with him. Now, Christina.
Can we go back to that for a second, if I may?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
What's your point of view on actually putting my address? Because couldn't we introduce bias into the equation if I tell you where I live?
Yes. So, and that was actually something that was actually I talked about in my team earlier. A lot of people still put their resume or their address in the resume. You don't need to put your full address. You could put like Baltimore, Maryland, or, for example, I live in New Jersey, the greater New York City area. That is okay. There is a safety call with that too, of not putting in your address. Of course, once you're hired at a company and you fill out those documents and you become an employee, that's a little bit different. They are going to want to have your address, on file just in case emergencies, whatever. But generally speaking, you should be okay to not include your address. And quite honestly, you should want to keep that information private.
Yeah. And then the other comment I wanted to just make about our friend Ham Dugo was even the visual of the coins. Like, we need to be cognizant of, like, we know that we're trying to have a brand, image or something like that. But if it's not going to help get the job, or get the look, then don't do it. One of the things that I'm sure Kaylee will get into at some point is how many people actually apply for jobs at L'Oreal every year. So she mentioned how much time she has to look at resumes. So you want to have a resume that's really effective and gets to the point without a lot of distraction.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's actually a good kind of, so Christina here, now she is somebody, this layout is beautiful. This is perfect. This is great. But this is an example of somebody who didn't put enough information. For example, one of her bullet points here says, used software to log customer feedback. What software? Put that software name in there, or responsible for receiving calls from customers. How many calls on a daily basis? And that's what I meant by KPIs before. Those are key performance indicators. So you want to put some tangible numbers in there. And, generally speaking, I would probably still call somebody like Christina with this resume because it's very easy to read, simple. She followed the correct steps. But this is an example of one that could just be enhanced a bit more. Maybe she receives 100 calls from customers a day. That's impressive. Or maybe she uses a certain software. That's an example of one where you could put in one of those buzzwords that you saw from a job. Maybe you applied to a job because you saw the software that you have that experience. Put that in there. That's okay. Just add a little.
And for those that just want to know, these names are they're not actually real people. They're just.
Yes. Yes, these are taken. Yeah, these were taken from an online source, but yes. So now I want to show some really great resume formatting examples and kind of walk through them again as we just did with the others. So here, 2 phenomenal resumes, Lilibeth and Jonathan. Now, if we go through the exercise that Nick and I showed of working this from bottom to top, it makes sense chronologically. The first thing I see are, okay, their education, their certifications, great, check. Maybe that's a pre-check that I need for my job. Then I go and see, okay, Lilibeth started out as a market research analyst. She was there for this amount of time, and now she's an IT operations data analyst. Great, that's what my job is. Let me continue reading more. And here's an example of one of those executive summaries. She says, motivated, teamwork-oriented, and responsible data analyst with significant experience in increasing comprehension of reports and presentations by the average professional. A little bit of a run-on sentence, but still, that's a very impactful sentence. Tells me a lot about her in one sentence. Jonathan here, this is an example of a headshot done well. And the only reason why I included this one is because he is a web developer. So here's an example of one of those more creative-centric roles where maybe you want to showcase that you know how to make something visually appealing and include a graphic. This one's a little bit of an exception here, but again, same type of flow, and you can see the difference between these two and a couple of the others that I just showed you. Again, here's 2 others, and I purposely picked Mary because if you notice, Mary's format is exactly the same as our friend Christina's. I love this format. It's great. She has all of her information. And see here, she even says just Brooklyn, New York. She doesn't put her address. So going back to Nick's point, a really great, effective way to do that. She's in Brooklyn. Great. My job's in New York City. That's close by. Fabulous. But Mary's, compared to Christina's, she has some of these key metrics. For example, she managed a portfolio of up to 20 products for Adecco data. Perfect. 20 products. Fantastic. She puts in here, designed a 3D game using Python and MySQL. Now, again, these are technical resumes, but I wanted to show this juxtaposition between the other because same format, but this is what Christina was missing. Sam, this is an example I wanted to show of how you can add a little bit of creativity, a little bit of color. I would probably remove some of the background graphics on this one to just make it perfect. But here's just again to showcase that you can add some of your personality to it and it's still easy to read and not too busy.
Kaylee, can I make a point on this too? Go back to that one if I may. So if you're inviting people to look at your social media, like Sam Stroll has got his Twitter handle there, right? Or I'm assuming it's him. It could be I don't know how Sam identifies, but Sam, they put Sam Stroll. That could invite me to go look online to look at Sam's Twitter handle. So I would not want Sam to have, a picture of him doing something that's not going to be so professional. Bingo. So if you're inviting people to look at your social media, be aware that you've told them to go look at your social media and that you don't want to be posting yourself at 3 a.m. in a bar, or whatever, standing whatever, like it's just not relevant to the job.
Sure. So, and you don't have to include that. Including your LinkedIn is okay. That is something
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to put those in there, unless again you have like a portfolio or a GitHub or something like that that is relevant. You know, it's a website for you for your portfolio or something like that. A good call out, Nick. Now here are two other ones. Now Kelly, this one eats my soul apart because the formatting is perfect. The font is okay because I believe this is still a professional font. It's a little busy for me. I would prefer this to be in maybe Times New Roman or a little bit better. But I wanted to showcase this one because it's not horrible. Again, the layout is really nice. Again, very simple, but the font could be tweaked a little bit. Now, John Doe here over here, I included this one specifically because this is a fantastic example of a junior resume. This is somebody who's applying to an internship. They just graduated high school or they're still in high school and they're trying to seek an internship. So you can tell this one's a little bit different because they talk about the clubs that they're in. They talk about their athletics and some of their activities. This is an exception to the rule of putting in some of those more personal topics because if you're in high school or you're just starting out, maybe you just graduated, you may not have a lot of experience to lean into. So you want to showcase how you have diversified yourself, the different things you are experienced in. You know, first thing with John too, he was an honor roll student while doing all of these activities. That shows me resilience. That shows me he's a go-getter, and you know that he's been keeping busy, and these are a lot of the things that he's really interested in. And of course, you can see here some of his work experience. He does not have a lot of bullet points. That's okay. This is a junior role. So resident lawn mowing, great. He put a sentence. That's all you need in this case because this is a really effective junior resume for someone who's seeking either their first employment or an internship.
Haley, two questions on this.
Yeah.
Is it necessary for someone to put a GPA on the resume? And then
No.
secondly, is it necessary to put the education first or last if you're a new graduating student or still in school?
So to the GPA question, no, you don't have to put it. Typically, the rule of thumb is if you've received some type, like for example, let's say you graduate magna cum laude, or you've received some type of accolade once you graduate college, you could include some of that, but I have never heard of an employer asking for a GPA unless maybe you're becoming a teacher or something like that. But yes, don't have to put that. You could probably omit that and just put like honor roll student and all the different AP classes that they've taken. To where to put the education, yes. If you are junior, you probably are going to want to lead with that to showcase where you are in your journey. Once you gain experience, the education can go to the bottom of your resume. I have also seen people with experience put it at the top. Sometimes in more technical roles, you want to lead with your degree because maybe it requires a PhD or a certain engineering degree, and you want that to be the first thing a recruiter sees. But generally speaking, from my experience, you would only put the education at the top like that if you're showcasing that you're a recent grad or you're still in school and you're seeking an internship, so you can highlight that because those are often the credentials that they're looking for like an intern.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love the questions. And here are two other examples that are very unique. Meredith here, this is an example of someone who had a gap in employment. So if you notice, she left work in 2016 to be a stay-at-home mother for 2 years. And I love this. I think it's wonderful. She talked about all the different social media networking events that she held. She even included some of those KPIs. She organized a 50+ member Facebook group. So she was staying busy while she was being a stay-at-home mom. And this is really effective. And oftentimes I really appreciate this when individuals will put in there what they've done in a gap period, or maybe you took time off, for professional development or something like that. Now, of course, you don't want to put in here, again, too much information. If you did have to leave work for, say, a medical reason, you probably don't want, you shouldn't feel complied to put that in there and expose that piece of you. But you could put in there like professional development or a gap to work on health or something like that, because it does look better in this case of, okay, well, at least I know what she's been doing for 2 years. Because let's say it was 2018 and Meredith had omitted this and she still applied and it looked like she had been doing nothing since 2016. Now, I am a general rule of thumb, I will still call people if they have the skills, even if there is a gap. but there are some hiring managers out there that would see that as a red flag. So you see this and say, oh, well, that's what they've been doing for 2 years, and now they want to re-enter the workforce. Fantastic. Cora here is someone who is changing careers. So all of her experience has been in sales, account executive, so on. But at the top, she says she wants to be a copywriter. And in her little blurb at the top, she says, energetic professional with 5 years of experience performing research, market analysis, and content development to drive B2B, which is business to business sales in the financial sector. Strategic writer, talented in creating marketing, promotional, and advertising materials that engage prospects and customers. So what she did here is she showcased her technical writing experience that she gained through working in sales that she can leverage to become that copywriter. So again, this is a way of wording some of these different skills and things that you have to maybe want to shift careers, or you want to jump into a new area. You can still highlight the skills you have. And again, this is further driving the point home of having those different versions of your resume. So I'm sure Cora also has a sales executive resume too in her Rolodex that she's using to apply to jobs in the sales field.
Can I make a comment on Meredith?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, she shouldn't be putting the date of birth.
Good point. Yes.
I mean, you can if you want, but it's not recommended at all.
Agree.
Number two, so many times people that I'm coaching with their resumes, they say, I need more space. I can't find, like, I want to say more stuff, but I don't have enough space. So for example, if you go down to the skills, you have like a block of space there that you could easily save by just saying excellent written communication, online research, organizational skills, and time management in one line, and take all those other bar graphs out. If you were looking for more space, that's just an example of how you might find space if you had more things that you wanted to say about your resume.
Exactly. And it's a good point too, Nick, because even though these are good examples of resumes, we can always improve them and make them better. And there's always that opportunity to edit, have somebody review it, and make some of those adjustments to them. So yes, I do see that oftentimes where people put a lot of those bar graphs. Just put the words. Again, keep it simple. That's the key.
Yep. We have about 20 minutes left. How's your time check doing?
Yeah, so I only have 2 more slides, so we can zip through these very quickly. So these are just some extra tips that I wanted to share with you all. So as we kind of talked through this, your recruiter is your ally. Trust them with all relevant information. Of course, if you feel comfortable. Generally speaking, someone like myself who represents a company, who's working for the benefit of that company, who is seeking to find the right person for the role and help you, these are the people that you may want to share a little bit more with. Now, there are some vendor recruiters and people from other areas that may not have your best interest at heart, but generally speaking, your recruiter is your ally, and they're the ones that maybe you want to disclose some sensitive information to. Ask them to coach you through, when to maybe disclose your when you have Tourette's, or disclose some other sensitive information. We are HR trained to have these conversations, and we're a good person to trust in coaching you through when to bring these up, how to manage it throughout the interview process. If you've ever been let go from a job, be honest about that in the HR conversations. And I explicitly call out HR conversations because if you're talking to a hiring manager or a manager, they should not be asking you these questions. That is for HR to handle. So if someone does ever ask you some of these questions that make you feel uncomfortable, please let your recruiter or HR professional know, but be honest with it up front because it will help you more than hurt you. Prepare 3 to 4 questions you can ask in all interviews. They don't have to be job specific, and this is more to help you. Maybe you feel you don't have the skills for a role, but you really want to stand out. And I gave you 3 examples here of ones that you can use in any job. They are, how is success measured in this role or in X company? What is your favorite thing about working at X company? And what is a possible challenge that a person in this role will face? Take these, write them down. These are 3 questions that you can impress any interviewer with, regardless of role, that you're interviewing for, your skills, any of that. These are really great questions and will give you some really valuable information as well. And last slide, when you're interviewing or applying for a role and you don't feel you have the skills, the best way to combat this is through prep work. You have experience and skills. It's just a matter of how you word it. So I'm going to put these examples up here, read through them, but the one I really want to pull out here is the last one, because it's an example of how you could take a personal attribute and make it professional. So I'm highly organized and like to keep a tidy workspace. Another way to word this is a detail-oriented professional with a proven track record of organization. As you can see, personal attribute turns into a business skill. So you have skills. It's just preparing for how you want to word them or how you want to showcase them. So you probably have a lot more skills than you even think you do today. And just do some of that prep work to help you really show up at any interview. And then again, driving the point home, this is why it's great to have different samples of your resumes, because you can say the same skills and word it in different ways. And the same goes for when you prepare for interviews. Think of examples you can use to answer multiple questions and showcase your skills in different ways. And that is it. That is everything. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat or anything you want to add, Nick, but that is everything I wanted to run through with you all. And I hope you got some valuable information out of it.
Great job, Kaylee. And as always, you're such a great resource and a partner to us in DEI. Love our talent acquisition team partners. Marissa, I don't see anything in the chat. Is there any questions that have come up?
Yeah, we received some questions. A really quick one is, folks want to know what a KPI is.
Oh, okay, yeah. Good.
That's a key performance indicator. So those are just tangible facts and figures you can put into your resume. So again, using the example of, I think it was Christina, she just said, answered customer calls. The KPI you could put in there is answered an average of 100 customer calls a day. So that 100, that number, that tangible result or that tangible thing that you managed is what I meant by a key performance indicator.
Okay, some other questions are, if you miss a period or there is a typo in your resume, how likely is that to actually impact your candidacy for a job?
It's very minute, and it will also, it's kind of subject to the person reading your resume. For example, myself, I don't take that much merit in it because I look at the content. I try to get to know the person behind the resume more, but not all recruiters are like that. And I know sometimes hiring managers will nitpick that of, well, they can't type their resume, so how are they going to write this document? It's not the end of the world. It's just one of the easiest things that you can control. Same thing with Nick's example. If you're submitting a paper, just proofread it to the best of your ability. But I would say, generally speaking, it's not going to be the biggest deal breaker if the content of your resume is relevant and clean.
Agreed. And then you also want to think about the kind of company you want to work for. If a company is going to nitpick you on your resume on something like that, do you really want to work in that kind of a culture that's not as inclusive or, understanding of, you have a recruiter like Kaylee looking at your resume and she's looking to bring talent into the organization. Yep. She's not looking to, no period, okay, the person's out, Yeah. But I bring it up from the standpoint of we can control what we can control, which is what we submit. So if we submit something that we can proofread, then let's do that. And the best way to do that is by reading it from the bottom up.
Thank you. So you talked a little bit about the executive summaries at the top of resumes. Kind of how long should those be, and what are some specific things that can be included in that executive summary?
So generally speaking, I would say no more than 5 sentences. 3 sentences is the sweet spot, but sometimes if you have more years of experience, 5 is okay. Some of the key things you want to include in there are the industries you have experience in, or the roles you have experience in. For example, I would put talent acquisition professional or human resources professional. Nick would put something probably like HR or DE&I and all these different things. So you want to put the industry, the experience that you have. Also, the years of experience. Many times candidates will put in there, 7+ year professional in XYZ fields. It's also a great place to call out if you're entry level. So you could say recent college grad seeking first-time job opportunity. The other thing you would want to include in there is what you're trying to accomplish by applying to this role. For example, when I applied to L'Oreal, I put in my resume, talent acquisition professional with 4+ years of experience, seeking a challenging new strategic role to build on the recruiting skills I already have and teach me more. Now, of course, I would make that a little bit cleaner, and that's just coming from the top of my head, and I didn't have time to proofread it. But these are the key things. So the industries, the things you have experience in briefly, the years of experience, entry level, so on, and then also what you're trying to accomplish by applying to this role.
So, and I just would like to just piggyback on that, if I may, go back to the exercise we did about the brand, right?
Yep.
What was the brand manager trying to accomplish? She was trying to accomplish to get her brand across, and she did it, or he did it, whatever the person it was trying to do, they did it well because you were able to say accessibility, you were able to say ease of use, you were able to, like, you said 3 brand attributes like that. So whoever that brand manager was got the point across. So that executive summary at the top, or the summary, the point of where you want to get across, think about those 3 to 5 things that you want people to know about you. 1, 2, 3, right away, because that's what they're going to see right away.
Yep.
Okay, is it better to have a resume with, the bullet points of your experience, or a resume that has more of like, paragraphs and summaries of your experience?
Bullet points, my preference, because it's easier to read. You're going to have the space in the interviews to elaborate. Think again, most recruiters are only spending 5 minutes tops reading your resume. We don't have the time necessarily to read an essay. To Nick's point, for example, there were, I want to say, probably like over 500,000 applicants at L'Oreal in the last year. I know some of my jobs, I will have 200 applicants on one job. That is an insane amount of people to get through. So when I'm just going through that, I don't spend more than 5 minutes reading them. So bullet points, those are the quick facts, the things that you want to get that point across in that brand identity.
But go back to what you said earlier about the job description, making sure that those keywords in the job description are in your resume, because the AI or the applicant tracking system is going to be searching for a certain percentage of keywords in your resume. And if it doesn't have a certain percentage of keywords, the recruiter's not even going to see that resume.
Yes.
So, which is why you want to have multiple versions of your resume, because you want to see, okay, project management, the job description says project management, it says collaboration, it says, negotiation, it says influencing, it says team player. You want to make sure that your resume reflects that somewhere in your resume, so that the applicant tracking system picks those words up and then hands to Kaylee, here's a resume that matches your search criteria.
Yes.
Okay, well, two more questions. One is, how far back is too far back if you say have gaps in your resume and you don't have a lot of experience, or you had to take some time off of work, kind of like you talked about? How far back should you go in putting in experience in your resume?
A very good question. And there's no, I don't know, Nick, if you ever thought on this, but from my standpoint, there's no formula. Everyone's situation is different. I would say generally anything over 5 years, 6 years is probably not going to be relevant anymore. But that's where, when I showed that resume example of still including that experience that maybe you had 5 years ago, and then putting in some details of what you did in that gap time, like the stay-at-home mom. But I think anything beyond 5 years would be challenging.
So I'll give you a point of view on this. It's your story.
Yeah,
so Nick can write your resume for you, and I can do it, and it's going to look pretty and beautiful. But if it doesn't enable you to tell your story about what you want people to know, then it's not going to work. So what I would say is whatever you would like the person to know about your journey is relevant. So on my resume, not that I'm looking for a job, I've been here 20 years, but I always update my resume. But
Yep.
if I were to hand somebody my resume, it goes back right to the beginning because I want them to know the unique journey that I've had from tech to
Yeah.
retail to HR and beauty, and then DEI. That's sort of the long and short of it. But my journey has been unique and there's a story behind it. And I want people to know about that story, you
Yeah.
know? So to Kaylee's point, I don't necessarily think there's a prescription on that, but it's really about what matters to you and how you're telling your story. Now, if you do have gaps in your resume, you have to be prepared to answer those questions. So if you say on your resume, I graduated in 1988 from college, which is the year I graduated, and I don't show any of the other jobs except for the last 10 years, somebody might say to me, what did you do before you joined L'Oreal? So I have to be prepared to answer that question, right? So if you're going to leave things off, be prepared to answer the question honestly and directly.
Yep, I agree.
Great questions. Any others, Marissa?
One last one. Now that you gave us kind of some tips and tricks, what are some good places to maybe go look for resume template or resources to use kind of to move forward to actually write your resume?
So believe it or not, Microsoft Word has a ton of fabulous templates. That's where I built mine, actually. Another one that's a good one that's actually a little bit out of the box is, I don't know if you've heard of the website, it's called Canva, C-A-N-V-A. That is a platform, it's free to use. You just create an account and there's a lot of really unique resume templates there. I would say that's probably more for the creative. But Microsoft Word has got a ton of them that are fabulous. And I'm sure there's other ones. Indeed would be another platform, but when in doubt, use Word. They have them right there for you.
I would also direct you to LinkedIn. Great resources on LinkedIn to help you build a resume, a professional resume. It's a professional social media site. So if anybody's going to tell you how to do it well, there's videos on there. There's educational videos. And the other thing is you can Google powerful resume words, the phrase powerful resume words, and you'll get hundreds of them, So you can Google resume formats and you'll get, thousands. Certainly the websites that, Kaylee gave you and I gave you are good places to start, but there's so much information.
Oh,
When I came out of college, there was nothing. It was go to the library and figure it out yourself, So you have the resources available. And then certainly, I could tell you that if you ever had a question about something, don't be afraid to reach out to me. Marissa, please give anybody our contact information. We're always here to answer questions about the topic that we talked about, or even L'Oreal. If somebody wants to consider a role at L'Oreal, we're more than happy to talk about our great company.
Ditto. I don't know if I shared my LinkedIn with you, Marissa, or if anyone's on LinkedIn, but please look me up, connect with me, utilize our expertise, because it would be my honor to help you and proofread your resume if needed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys again for an awesome presentation. It was very informative. This is all the time that we have today for a webinar. Once we close the webinar, all the participants will receive a survey on the presentation. We would greatly appreciate it if you guys would complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording of the webinar. The recording will also be posted on TAA's YouTube channel. For those who are unable to participate or you want to re-watch things over again. Otherwise, we encourage you guys to reach out to us about this webinar or other ideas and suggestions that you may have. On behalf of the Tourette Association, thank you again for joining us and for taking the time to join this webinar. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.